Hello and welcome back to Part-Time Bodybuilder. This is your host, Holly Jeans. I am very excited today to have Marianne Parks on, who's joining me all the way over from the US. So I'm very excited to have someone else on, expand our horizons a little bit. So Mary is an IFBB pro and she got her pro card in 2020. Is that correct? Make sure I get my facts correct. I don't know whether you want to do a bit of an introduction, Mary, and then we'll get started.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. I am now on my third year of competing. I started in 2018 kind of as almost like a bucket list. Just wanted to see, what I was able to accomplish and how far I was going to be able to push myself. And I think like everyone else, when you do your first show, it's addictive and you just can't stop. And so it's kind of where I am. So it's been a up and down journey for the last 3 years, and I was very lucky to win my pro card last year at nationals here in the US. And I'm currently prepping for my pro debut. We're 9 weeks out, so very excited about that.
Very exciting. So can you remember how you got introduced to the world of competing?
Yes, actually, someone from my high school competed. I think she only did one show, but I had never even seen it before. And I was looking at her, and as she was documenting her prep and the workouts, and then the diet and the show, and I was just so intrigued and motivated by it, but then also completely terrified. That I was like, yeah, and I won't ever do that, but I love the idea, and so I kind of mulled on it for a few years before I got the courage to sign up and do one myself.
So that was in 2018.
2018 is when I signed up for the first show. So I started in June, and then my first show was in November. So.
Have you always kind of done the NPC, IFBB style federation?
Yeah, I've never competed anywhere else.
And so how did that first prep go? Like, what was it like? How did you find the diet and the training?
I feel like everything happens for a reason. So there definitely was a reason for this, but I started with some local coaches, and I followed what their guidance was, and it was basically, low calories day one, and I don't know, I didn't know any different, so I just pushed and I did what I was told, but it was brutal. I got very, very small and very little muscle that first prep, just because I was on day one, I was dropped to 1,100 calories. So, and I was no refeeds, no cheat days, nothing for 3 months. So it was rough, but taught me a lot.
Yeah, I think we all kind of find our way in bodybuilding, don't we? I don't know. I don't come from a fitness background. I think you work full time as well, don't you? You're not.
Yes.
Yeah. This job. I think you kind of learn along the way, and you kind of have to make a few mistakes.
Yeah, no, it all happens for a reason. I learned a lot. I worked with my first coach for a year and a half before I decided I needed some better guidance. So yeah, lots of ups and downs, and it all progressively got better. I did 3 preps with him, and it got higher and better and more muscle. I was never really in a gaining phase at all. I had moments of like higher calories, but it was that like maintenance. So, I put on not as much muscle as I probably should have during that time. And I just worked so hard for very little, reward. So.
Did you have any kind of background of training before you started competing, or was it kind of straight in the gym, straight onto prep?
Yeah. I in high school I ran, so a distance runner. So I did a long distance on the track and cross country. And then that was really all I knew. So after I graduated high school, then it was just like casual runs. And I had started in the gym, but I was, ironically enough, I was vegan for several years. I'm no longer vegan. I'm I guess pescatarian. But I started going to the gym and working out 3 to 4 days a week, doing a weight program that I had found online. And I never saw any changes. You know, I think we know that if the diet's not right, then you're really not doing a lot.
So in terms of like leaving that coach and finding a new one, what was kind of your thought process behind finding another coach and kind of moving?
So I wanted there were two primary things that I wanted. I wanted somebody who specialized in bikini and was known for being able to do what I wanted, which is turn myself pro. So I wanted somebody who was very, knowledgeable in that area and was going to be able to help me. But I also wanted I was not a part of a team. I was literally the only athlete that they had. So I would go to shows and I'd be alone, or, and day in and day out, there was no support. I didn't have anyone locally that competed. And so I was very isolated in it. And I just wanted a little bit more camaraderie and a team. But I wanted it to be the right fit. So that's kind of what I was looking for. And I had a short list of different coaches that I had, seen on Instagram and kind of researched a bit. And ironically enough, when I was competing at nationals in 2019, I was still with my previous coaches, and it just wasn't a good experience. Their support that day, and number one on my list, Casey Marshall from Boss Bodies, she was there. The team was there, and I was, this might be the perfect opportunity to meet with her and see if we're a good fit. And I reached out. She, really surprised me by, welcoming me to their hotel room, bringing me up, talking to me, introducing me to the whole team. Like they spent like an hour talking to me, and this was like the day of the competition. I'm like, you're busy. It really made me feel like welcomed, and I knew it was the right fit at that moment. So
I think support, like you say, and the kind of team you have around you can make such a difference. It's something that I've changed over this past year. I had a very similar experience to you, that I started off with a local coach, someone that took me from kind of like a personal training lifestyle client into competing. And I've recently changed to a specialist bodybuilding team, and it just makes such a difference being able to bounce off people and having that support network.
yes, it does. It does. I mean, the grind of day in and day out, just to be able to message a friend, and also like team shows are so much fun. I'm not sure if you competed yet with your team. It's a whole different experience. So
I'm really looking forward to that, because I've had again similar experience that you turn up on show day, you don't know anyone, you kind of do the whole thing on your own. And so yeah, I'm really looking forward to that aspect of it. So you do your show in 2019. You joined Cassie's team shortly after that. What was the plan of action there? I know you went into quite a long off season, didn't you, before you come back in 2020?
yeah, I mean, the whole plan was to build. It was very obvious how small I was. All the feedback I had received from every judge was that I needed to build, and it was like an overall build. So that was the plan, was a long off season. The plan was to really put on the size I needed. And then we started in basically December, and then kind of COVID hit in March. All the shows started getting pushed back. So the urgency even relaxed even more. And so I was really able to just focus on that, knowing that we had even more time. So yeah, the the plan was to kind of just keep building until the shape was right. Luckily, she has a good eye and could see that, because I think we all have our own goggles of, you know, what we look like, especially as we gain weight. Because I put on quite a bit of weight. I was able to put on a lot of muscle, luckily, but I was 21 pounds up from my previous stage weight by the end of that prep.
And did you struggle? I've just come out of quite a year off season. Did you struggle in terms of like body image with putting weight on? And I think sometimes it's quite hard when you're in a long off season to keep the focus, especially when you see your body changing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's natural to feel that way. I mean, I had to get a completely new wardrobe. Nothing fit. So there's that. I mean, but ironically enough, because of the situation with COVID, I went from working, you know, I'm in sales, and so I would normally go out and visit with customers in person, and everything became remote. So I was working at home, and that was a really big relaxant. I didn't have to worry, okay, you know, nothing fits. What am I going to wear to work? And, you know, how does this look? I mean, there were moments, I live in Florida, we go to the beach and I have to put a bathing suit on, and I'm like being self-conscious and starting to, you know, try to get bigger and bigger suits. But ultimately it's, you know, I was still focused, and I didn't let myself kind of dwell on that too much, because I was so determined. I almost was, I was hesitant to stop the building season, because I was almost traumatized by having, you know, pushed so hard and so many times to get up there and be told you're not big enough, you need more muscle. So I just am like, let's not stop, we'll keep going, you know. So eventually she reined me in and was like, okay, it's time, we can cut down. I hesitantly allowed it, and luckily it all worked out. But yeah, no, it's body image is hard. So you really gotta to work on your mindset. I think is the biggest thing, more than anything else. It's, I mean, we all, everything gets skewed once you've seen yourself lean. You never think, you know, that leanness is the same criteria. As an outsider, I still looked healthy. I still looked fit, even at my highest weight. So it's just, you gotta kind of take off those goggles and try to see yourself from an outside perspective, and what we all, you know, everyone else would see outside of the competition prep. So
yeah, definitely. So clearly diet and you gained weight, so both of those were different factors. In terms of training, how different was your training approach when you changed?
It was very different, because previously it was doing in-person personal training,
Right,
5 days a week. And the sessions were an hour long, and then I would have some additional cardio on my own. But I went from 5 days, you know, an hour long, to on my own like 6 days, and it being an hour and a half to 2 hours of like lifting time. So it definitely was longer and more volume, but it was really hitting the areas that I needed. I had never worked shoulders as much as I did, and I had never targeted, you know, the different areas of the glutes and the hamstrings as much as I did, you know, working in the new program. So it was very different, and it was more challenging, but it worked, and I have the results to show for it. So.
And in terms of prep, did you find that having such a productive off season and really taking that time to kind of build calories up, to gain the weight, to change up the training, did you find your prep process smoother because of that?
every prep is challenging no matter what. And I have found like it's hard because yes, you build up calories and so you're able to diet on higher calories. But if you're at enough of a deficit, even if you're still hungry.
Yeah.
So well, like the first part of that prep, I was dieting on maybe 1,600 calories. I was starving, so food was higher, but you've got more muscle, your metabolism is higher, so it's always challenging. And then towards the end of my prep, I was starting to have some, I have probably a mild scoliosis. I have issues with my hip, and so cardio became very difficult because I would get very inflamed and watery. So we ended up having to reduce almost to like no cardio. I was doing like 10-minute walks at the end, and then we just pulled calories very, very low. So things got kind of rough at the end, just food wise, but it was the best method for me at that time because my body was no longer stressed, and it was actually just easier to pull food than have to just have more and more output.
Yeah, you have to work around these kind of things, don't you, and just go with your body sometimes. And so I've seen that there was quite a big injury as well in 2020 in terms of you really hurt your knee, didn't you? What was the timeline for that? Was that, I'm guessing, pre-prep?
Yeah, so I won my pro card in November of 2020, and we took a vacation in January of 2021, so just like 2 months later, and we went skiing. And I had never been skiing before. It sounded like a wonderful idea, something that we could do outside and potentially not have to be exposed to a lot of people, things like that. During COVID, we're still in a somewhat lockdown here in the US, and things were restricted, and we're just trying to be cautious. And so yeah, we went, and I had a fall and ended up fracturing my tibia. So I was on crutches for about 2 months, and I had about 12 weeks of physical therapy. And yeah, it's been so that happened in January. I had surgery in February, and then I was off the crutches and starting to train normally again back in April. And we started prep in June. So I had a little bit of time to try to rebuild. There's muscle atrophy that happens whenever you get injured like that and you're not able to utilize a certain area, muscle group. But luckily, most of that atrophy generally comes back pretty quickly once you can regain. So I'm almost back to normal as far as that. Just still that I don't know if that knee will ever be 100%, but we're working towards it. So.
And how do you kind of keep the focus and the mindset straight with an injury? I've actually just injured my foot while on prep, so I'm kind of like, it's quite hard, isn't it, to go from being kind of all in to almost feeling like you can't do everything that you want to do.
Yeah, that for sure is, I think it's the biggest part is mental. You just have to stay strong. And I had my days where it was rough. I was on crutches working from home. I could just getting a glass of water from the kitchen was difficult because you can't carry it on crutches. And so I'd wear a backpack and I'd crutch around, and, little things, you realize how challenging they can become when you have an injury like that. But, I knew that, dwelling on the situation or feeling sorry for myself wasn't going to help anything, and I wanted to keep a strong mindset and a positive outlook. I try to have I'm probably always an optimist, and I've known people in my life that have gone through really difficult situations and remained positive, and for me they're role models. So I've always thought, okay, if they can do this, if they, I had a coworker who had cancer, and despite everything that was happening to her, she always smiled and, was upbeat, and, it just stuck with me that I wasn't going to let this break me. I wasn't going to let this stop me. I worked so hard for so long to become a pro, that I wasn't going to stop there. And so I was going to come back, and I was just going to figure it out. That being said, it's hard. You have your moments. Things that helped me remain focused and remain calm is I would start the morning with a meditation. It's one of those things that you always hear that we should be doing more of, and we never make time for it, or maybe one day. But I knew that I had to force myself to do it, and it helped immensely. So I started with that. I read, and I remained focused on what I could do. So there was a lot to learn as far as regaining use of my leg, and I had a lot of exercises that I had to do to try to, I would focus on, okay, I had to lift my leg this many times, or do these slides, things like that. It's easier to focus on today, what you have to accomplish, than worry about how long it's going to take or where you're going to be. So, I went to the gym every day. Basically, I had surgery, and 2 days later, I was in the gym on crutches. I couldn't pick up dumbbells, so I was limited to really just using machines. So I figured out what I could do, and I focused on that. So I fractured my leg. I couldn't use that, but my upper body was one of the areas that I needed to improve. I needed to build, bigger shoulders and wider lats. And so I just used all the machines and everything that was available to me to be able to work on those areas. And so, for me, it was like, I have no excuse. I need to focus on this. I'm still able to do that. That's what I'm going to do. So how I tackled it.
I think it's almost that prep mindset teaches you a lot about mindset in general, doesn't it? It's that approach to, let's just get through this day, or let's just get through this moment. And you kind of, before you know it, you're kind of a week later or a month later, and you've ticked off all those little goals and little achievements.
Yeah, no, it's like, okay, I'm hungry, but I've got an hour till my next meal. Or you're on the cardio machine, you're like, just 10 more minutes, you got this.
Yes, those tiny little mindset tricks, and like the little goals that you can set yourself to kind of overcome things. Can kind of use it in every area of your life, clearly.
Yeah.
And so how did you kind of determine, okay, now I feel ready enough to start a prep, I feel like I've rehabbed enough to start a prep?
My shape had improved a lot. From winning my pro card to the 2 months before the injury, I was building significantly. So I had made a lot of improvement right before I had gotten injured. Obviously, the injury set me back, but then as soon as I was really able to start working out again, after I got off crutches, the transformation from day one off crutches to like a month later is night and day. So it really showed that, okay, your shape is coming back, everything's filling out. I think you're there. My feedback was larger shoulders, larger glutes. Isn't that all of our feedback?
Shoulders and glutes.
Yeah, it was apparent that I had put on some size, and which is so exciting to see. So my coach felt I was ready, so we kept building a little bit longer, and then June, she said that we were ready. I prefer longer preps, so that I have plenty of time. I don't want to be rushing, or like to just kind of relax through it. So cardio doesn't have to get quite as high, food doesn't have to get quite as low, things like that.
Yeah, and the kind of, I suppose, the element of stress on your body as well. If you don't have to push it quite so far, it'll keep a bit happier a bit longer, hopefully.
Yeah.
And so what are the pro debut plans?
Obviously, it could potentially change, but right now I'm looking at October 2nd, the Minneapolis Pro. And then I will continue to do several shows after that, based upon feedback and kind of placings and how I do. So I potentially would be competing October, November, and who knows how long. So I've set aside some vacation time at work, so I have that to be able to pull from. So I'm really excited and honored just to be competing on the pro stage next to all these women that I've looked up to and idolized. And so I'm planning on doing several shows. I mean, I think every show you do, you learn something, you get a little bit better, find a way to improve. So I think that probably will be the case on the pro stage as well. So.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I can imagine all the kind of bikini planning and like posing and routine as well, because you get a bit more stage time, don't you, with the pro circuit, so you can kind of have a bit more fun with posing.
Yeah. So I mean, I've added in a walk to the back and kind of like a little bit more flair. So I don't want it to be too long, but yes, I'm still practicing my routine. That's a whole new thing. Posing is so hard for me for whatever reason, but I can work out all day, diet, no problem. But the whole stage atmosphere, I guess I'm more of an introvert by nature, so you just have to kind of like practice and create a whole new persona, just to kind of get out of your shell. But yeah, so lots and lots of practicing on the posing as well. So
yeah, I know I've kind of heard you say that posing was something you really worked on in that kind of off season leading up to your pro card win too.
yes.
And what did you put in place? Was it just practicing more regularly, or?
Yeah, so I mean, I forced myself to do it. There was someone here, as who does suits and posing, that offered free posing assistance during COVID, and so I took her up on that and sent in videos every couple days. And so, and I think the more you practice, the more you record yourself, you can see what you're doing, or mistakes that you're making. And also I really took the time to study kind of the sport. So I would go to NPC News Online's YouTube. I'd watch the different shows, the NPC regional shows, also pro shows, and kind of figure out what they were doing. I think that when you start watching and you can see other people's mistakes, then it's so much easier, at least for me, to realize, oh, that's what I'm doing wrong. Okay, don't put your arm that high, put it, right here, and your delt rounds a little bit, or let me, twist my hips just a little bit to the left, and things like that. So yeah, posing, I didn't have a lot of help or good guidance before that, my first year. So I worked with some online posing coaches as well. It always blew my mind. I thought that I needed to see somebody in person to really learn. And then I worked with somebody through like FaceTime that knew what they were doing and was able to, watch and show me. If you work with the right person, it's so much better than a local person that isn't an expert.
And is there anything that's built your confidence, or do you just think it's a case of like drilling it and doing it more and more?
Yeah, for sure.
Amazing. we've briefly touched on the fact that you mentioned that you have slight scoliosis, and that's something you actually picked up through posing, wasn't it?
Yes. So before I started with Casey, I did in-person check-ins. So I wasn't taking progress pictures, and I wish I had, but I didn't need it. I would train in person with them. They would see me. But once I started taking weekly progress pictures, it was evident in my back pose there was a difference in the levels of my shoulder height. So my right shoulder would be significantly lower than my left. And and then also once I leaned out, I realized my left glute is a little bit smaller than my right glute. And so there were all these imbalances I was picking up on that I never put two and two together until actually just this year. I started seeing some specialists to try to figure it out. And yes, I got x-rays and I was told I had a spine curvature, which makes sense. I mean, I think anytime most people have an imbalance with their shoulders, there is some type of curvature. And normally, whether you want to diagnose it as scoliosis or not, it's it is some version of that spinal curvature. But once I learned what it was, I figured out ways to improve it. So I went on. I started seeing a chiropractor and getting regular alignments, and I started working with someone who does deep tissue work to release adhesions I had. So I had, one part of my spine was really locked up and contracted. So, and I had full knots all over that, my traps, my rhomboids. And so, she'll work, and these are like the most painful sessions ever, but, to really release it and allow, your muscles to move. And so I'm doing all kinds of things like that, cupping, Graston as well, just trying to kind of release and stretch to improve that. And it's made a huge impact already. So to give anybody hope who might have that, once you realize what you're working with and where your deficits are, it can be improved. Because I also hired a personal trainer to kind of watch me work out, and I realized because of the curvature, my one shoulder was rolled forward, and I had built all this muscle in balance. So I had way more muscle on my left lat than on my right. I have more muscle on my front delt than on my left. And so once I realized what I was doing, I was able to change my workout techniques and change my postures, and rebuild and make it more symmetrical. So I'm working on that, building additional muscle on certain sides to be able to pull things back into a neutral, even area. So a year ago when I was posing, I had to pull my shoulder up and kind of fake it. Yeah. Now I don't. I don't actually have to do that anymore. So I hope that gives people hope. It's long, hard work, but you definitely can make improvements. I don't know if I'll ever be 100%, but it's improved dramatically. So
yeah, because so much about bodybuilding in general is symmetry and being symmetrical. I've mentioned it before we hit record that my shoulders are completely out of alignment, and I have to raise my right shoulder up in my back pose to make me look straight. So it's really interesting. And actually my osteopath was saying that scoliosis is any deviature from straight. So actually quite a lot of people have got slight curvature of the spine, but a lot of people would never pick it up, because I think it's because what we do, like you say, you take a progress picture and you go, oh yeah, that's not straight.
Yeah, I think so many people think that it has to be an extreme version where you can literally see the spine curving, and it's not. I mean, you look at me and I look normal, but if you have to stand there and really pinpoint and like kind of look, closely, you can see the difference. But when we're posing, they, the judges are scanning. They're looking up and down, left and right, and they're looking for imbalances. And so for me, that's why it was so important to kind of focus on that. And then I think just working on this and making an improvement to that will help me when I get older. Anybody who has spinal curvatures tend to have a lot of back pain, or gets slooped over. So I don't want to be that. I feel like I'm investing in myself now to be able to improve upon that, which is not only going to help me competing, but it'll just help in the long run as well.
Yeah, I think, like you say, it will help you now, and the fact that you'll be able to build muscle more equally. But yeah, you don't want to be running into problems in kind of 30 years and picking it up then. So yeah, I think a lot of people don't take kind of the recovery side as seriously in this sport. It's all focused around diet and training, whereas I think mindset and recovery sometimes get missed off, and they're two aspects that are just so important.
Oh, for sure. I think recovery is extremely important to me. I have in my living room, I have a little section, is all my tools. I've got a massage gun, I've got a yoga wheel, I've got stretching straps, I have cups, like the actual Chinese cups. You do the suction, and you're able to move the muscle and the fascia around, because you get all these fascia adhesions. And so I think it's really important. I mean, it can help show more detail. I've seen people that specialize in fascia release, that will show a bodybuilder before and after, and it's night and day. Like the muscle is finally freed up, and it's able to pop, and it's able to actually go through the movement, and so you can see lines that you didn't have before. And not only visually, you're just more functional. So I think recovery is so important that just undervalued. I believe not as many people talk about it. So
what I find really interesting about you is you clearly study every area of this sport. Like, you seem very, very knowledgeable in kind of a lot of different fields. I just get the impression that you're very interested, and you kind of go away and study everything.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely a nerd, and
I love it.
Yeah, I want to know what's going on and what the issues are, and so I'll buy books on it and study up for it. Like I've got 2 books right now, and it's specifically for like muscle adhesion issues and trigger points. And so I just like to focus on different areas and ways to improve and know why something's happening. I kind of like I absorb everything. Like I'll listen to podcasts and YouTubes and any area, whether it's nutrition or body or posing. I just like soak it all in. So
I love it. And my head's gone. That's no good, is it? You can tell that I'm 7 weeks
oh, I feel ya.
My brain's just broken. Oh, that's what I was going to say. How do you find kind of balancing the kind of full-time work with your sales job and the bodybuilding world? Because you're obviously very, very invested in bodybuilding. How do you find balancing the two?
Yeah, I mean, it gets harder. Things are opening back up, and so I've been really enjoying working from home for the last year, but that's getting pulled away from me, and I'm having to go out and meet people and get dressed up and do those type of things. And I can tell you, when you are having to bring your food with you and get your water in, and I'm out on the road, you know, having to find a gas station so I can use the bathroom, things get challenging. And so you just have to make it work. Some days are better than others, but you know, unfortunately it's getting up a little bit early, or working out after work, which I don't typically like to do. I'd much prefer to do it in the morning, but if I have to, you know, you've got to fit it in. I'm currently, I was just talking to my boyfriend, trying to figure out, okay, cardio is starting to go up. It's such a challenge for me to get to the gym to do the cardio and then also work out in time. I was like, dude, maybe it's time to get a treadmill at the house, just so I have better, you know, work-life balance. I'm able to, you know, jump, you know, wake up and jump right on it, or you know, potentially get a little desk, and so I can do it while I'm answering emails. But you figure out how to make do. Bring your food, you know, stop at gas stations. You train early, you train late. It's, I think anybody who's really determined, you'll find a way. There's always a way. There's a will, there's a way. So.
I've got a bike at home, and it is a game changer, because you just get out of bed and get straight on the bike, because I've got a 9 to 5 corporate job, so it does help when you can roll out of bed, get straight on, do your cardio, and then get on with your day.
Yeah, I'm feeling it now, not having that cardio equipment at home. So definitely think that might be a new addition for me. It's just hard because I don't typically do a lot of cardio in the off season. So it's like, okay, I'm gonna have this for 3-4 months, but you know, I'm gonna be competing potentially more often next year as well. So it's like, all right, I think it's time. You need it.
Mine's foldable, so I just fold it up and then put it away. So it's quite handy.
Oh yeah, maybe that's what I need. That you know, there's never space for it, but if it you know is compact like that, I think that would be perfect.
And it gets dismantled and put under the bed in off season, because I don't do cardio in off season.
Oh, okay. Well, you know what? That's perfect. I didn't realize that they even came apart like that. So
there you go. Make your life a lot easier.
Yeah.
So I'll finish with one last question before I let you go. What's competing taught you? What do you love about competing? And then what do you find the most challenging about it?
Competing has taught me so much, but I think it's taught me how strong I am as a woman, and how much I'm capable of. I think anybody who has survived their first prep and come out the other side realizes, okay, what I thought was hard is no longer hard. You know, if I can do this, I can pretty much do anything. Anybody who can stick to it has a new, you know, admiration of what's possible. And so, and the same thing with going through my injury, I realized how strong I am. There's absolutely nothing I can't deal with, and competing has given me that. It's also given me the confidence in myself and my abilities, and allowed me to kind of step out of my shell and, you know, put myself out there. And I'm so grateful that I have. Probably the hardest part for me is, I think it is the posing and the stage presentation, but it's getting better. I think it's one of those things, is the more you practice, everything gets easier. So
I think of stuff like confidence and that like a muscle, like you have to build it and keep using it. So I agree. I think the more you do it and the more you practice, the easier it gets.
For sure, for sure.
It's been an absolute pleasure having you on. I've absolutely loved hearing a bit more about your journey. If people want to follow your journey to the pro stage for your pro debut, where can they find you?
I'm on Instagram. My handle is Marianne_IFBB Pro. Please message me. I'd love to chat. I'm looking forward to following along your 7 weeks for your prep. I'm 9 weeks out, so it's always good to know somebody you can message. All right, are you on the treadmill? What are you doing?
Yeah, that makes such a difference. This year I'll be messaging people on the Stairmaster like, are you doing cardio too?
Yes, well, thank you so much for having me on. It's wonderful. I feel very honored to be, on a British podcast, and be one of the few Americans you had on. So it's been so much fun. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for sharing your story. I will tag your Instagram handle in the show notes so people can find you. And please head over to Mary's page and give her a follow and support her in her journey to the pro stage.